Continuing on with my series about how to make a military rifle stock, I have the rough cut blank and the barreled action out to prepare to inlet. It's a slow process removing just enough material to have the action fit snugly in the stock. To do so, I'm going to be checking the fit very often to see the parts where I need to remove more material, so I'll start by stripping down the barreled action as much as possible. Next, I want to get the stock into the vise and establish a center line. Before I do that, I want to make sure that the stock is perfectly straight. I'll look down both sides, checking to see if it's bowed. This looks perfect, but a slight bow can be worked around by drawing a center line with a ruler. Since this looks good, I can simply mark a line halfway across from the edges. I'll start with the top. And I'll flip the square around with the fence on the other side and the pencil the same distance from the edge. This will ensure that I have the exact center marked, as well as darkening my line, making it easier to see. I'll continue down the wrist to the comb of the buttstock, and I might as well do the underside as well, while the sides are still squared up. Now I'm ready to begin inletting, and my tool of choice is the plunge router. But the top of the stock is only 2 inches wide, not enough of a base for the router to be stable. What I'll do is find 2 straight boards and set them upside down on a flat surface. I'll place the stock upside down in between them, and then clamp them all together. I'll move the assembly back to the vise. And now I have a much wider surface, giving a much more solid base to the router. But before I start cutting, I want to take some measurements. The barrel is continuously tapered, which makes it trickier to fit than a straight or a stepped barrel. The end measures 0.625 or 5/8 of an inch, luckily the size of a bit that I have. I'll step up to the next bit size I have, 3/4, and run it up the barrel until I find the point where it's that size, and then mark it down. I'll repeat with the next size, 7/8. And I'll measure the size of the chamber area, 0.985, so I won't be able to use a 1-inch bit there, unfortunately. To recap, I'm first going to cut the whole barrel channel with a 5/8 bit, and then from here back to the action with a 3/4, and finally here back with a 7/8. I have the correct 5/8 bit in there now. I'll add the fence and get it centered on the line that I marked earlier. Then I can set the depth, which is half of the diameter, or 5/16, the size of this block. I'll set it on one of the lower depth stops, so I can use the higher ones for the first couple of passes. I'll start with a light pass, and increase the depth by about 1/16 of an inch with each subsequent pass. When I have the whole channel cut, I'll change out to the next bit, the 3/4. I don't need to move the fence at all since it's still centered, but I do need to set the bit depth. I'll shift over and plunge down. The depth stop is in 1/8 inch increments, so I'll set it on the highest position. I'll rotate it 2 positions for the first pass, full depth probably the 3rd position. Now I'll double check my start point and begin routing. I'll repeat this process again with the 7/8 bit. This time the depth is 7/16 of an inch, so I'll use the same 5/16 block for my starting point, and then 1 more rotation for the full depth. For a stepped barrel, this is looking pretty good, but the barrel I have has a slight taper to it. I can only test fit the muzzle, which is a good fit. For everything else, what I have here is a starting point. Really only the very end and the beginning of where I stepped up in bits are the size where they need to be. In between those points, I have to gradually connect the dots, so to speak. I'll start by actually connecting the dots in the form of some guidelines. To carve out the areas I just marked, I'm going to be using a gouge, which is basically a curved chisel. I'll push it by hand, not with a mallet, because I want to ensure better control by removing just a small amount of material at a time. I'll start with the stepped areas and then move forwards to form a smoother transition. Then I can work the edge close to the line that I drew, and then work down below the edge, and so on. As I go, I can check progress with a straight edge, checking to see if there's high spots and then take those down. I can also check the progress by feel, running my fingers down the barrel channel, looking for an abrupt change rather than a smooth taper. It helps that I'm pulling the gouge towards me. Once I get a good cut going, I can pull that down the channel towards the end of the stock, slowly decreasing the depth of cut as I go, creating a gentle taper. Once I feel as though I've done enough with the front section, I'll move down to the middle of the 3 sections. Since this one is much shorter than the front, it has a stronger taper over its length, You can see right here, and once before, that I'm starting to have the grain tear out, risking the cut running deeper than the line that I have drawn. I'll switch directions and carve front to back. It seems as though the grain on the very left side of the channel needs to be carved in this direction. The bottom and the right side can be carved back to front. That's why I like to go slow and take small bites at a time in case I sense the grain changing. The last section, the one closest to the receiver, I don't have a specific endpoint since it's just slightly smaller than a 1-inch diameter bit. I'll just have to follow the lines for the sides, going by feel, and a straight edge for the rest of it. Once I feel as though I've carved enough, I'll smooth everything out by sanding. I'll wrap sandpaper around a scrap steel rod. I can check the diameter with my calipers to make sure that it's just under the 5/8, the smallest point of the barrel. Then I can sand where I've carved, not just by pressing directly down, but also holding against the left and the right sides of the barrel channel. As I move up the channel closer to the receiver, I'll unroll the sandpaper and stick in another piece to increase to a larger diameter to better match the area that I'm sanding. I'll step up the diameter again as I work to the larger end of the barrel channel. As I sand, I'll feel along to detect any high spots that need attention. It's easier to feel them rather than relying on eyesight or a straight edge. I'm not going too heavy on the sanding, I'm just intending on smoothing out the chisel marks. Here you can see the beginning of where I stepped up in the router bits. Those areas are untouched by the sanding. Now once I feel as though I've carved enough of the barrel channel out, I can test the fit. I can't get the action low enough to test fit since the receiver is an inlet, even if I try rotating it upside down, and yes, I would need to remove the rear sight. What I could do is to remove the barrel, or use something else as a stand-in for the barrel. As a part of the parts lot that I bought for this rifle, I do have a cut-down barrel here. This isn't perfect as an analog for the barreled action, since there's a front sight band added, but at least I can check the rear section. I double checked all the measurements and confirmed that it measures the same, so the taper hasn't changed at all. I'll mark it down where it should fit, using a rear sight screw hole to align the two. Then I can transfer the cut down barrel, align the screw hole, and mark the ends. It's hard to visualize if it's sitting at the correct depth, but I can take the camera and look at the chamber. The center should be exactly at the top of the wood. From what I'm seeing here, it needs to go down, both because the bore is high, but also because the bottom isn't touching. To see what's preventing it from sitting to depth, I'll hold up the front end since I don't want the front sight band to interfere, and give the rear a few taps with a soft mallet. The hope is that this will translate to the wood where it's contacting. With the barrel removed, I can see the dark areas right here on either side of the barrel channel. These are the high spots. I'll take them down with the gouge and repeat the process with a few more taps. You can also hear where the barrel is contacting based on the note that it makes when being tapped. A thud is the high spots, and a ring aren't. Repeating this process and taking off a small amount of material at a time will eventually result in a good fit. I took a moment to double check my positioning, which is always a good idea, and I realized that I need to move the barrel forward quite a bit, just over 1/2 of an inch. Since it has a very gradual taper, I can get away with repeating the tapping down of the barrel and relieving those marks. For the rest of it, I'll use the sandpaper to sort of move the taper down the stock. In hindsight, this might be a good strategy to cut a channel for a tapered barrel, to fit the barrel a bit further back than its final location, then inching it forward for a nice snug fit. Once I'm satisfied with where the barrel is sitting, at least where the chamber area is sitting, I can start the inlet for the front end of the receiver where the barrel is screwed into. This part is cylindrical just like the barrel, so I can follow the curve that I already have at the bottom of the barrel chamber, just adding a step down. I'll mark it. And make a cut across with a narrow chisel. Then I can pivot the chisel, deepening the cut until I get to approximately the depth that I want. I'll remove some waste as I go, allowing the chisel to go to depth. I'll use a wider chisel along the grain to remove the rest of the waste. I'll use calipers set to the diameter of the receiver to check if it's wide enough. For the depth, I'll take 1/2 of the diameter, add in the thickness of this ruler, and then measure down. It's not touching at all. It's about 50 thousandths deeper, which is actually good. This will be one of the areas where I'll add epoxy later to ensure that the action doesn't move around within the stock. Of course, I can't test fit the action now, since the rest of the receiver area needs to be inlet. After that's done, I may need to come back and make small changes to the barrel channel, but I'm confident that it's at least close. I'm going to cut off the video here and cover that in the next one. This video turned out much longer than I thought, so it makes sense to split them up. If you're working on a stepped or a straight barrel, the process for inletting the barrel channel is much easier. A tapered barrel is tough and requires a lot more work. Thanks for watching.